Hello and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining another episode of the Market Snapshot series. My name is Rufus Kamau, Markets Analyst at FX Pesa. So, good morning, Buddha. Thank you for joining. Good morning, Ronald Hirari. Thank you guys for joining. So, let's get things started. So, we'll be talking about the key market events that are driving prices today. We'll be looking at technical analysis, trying to understand where the markets have been, where they might be headed next. And once we cover these, hopefully everyone will be able to trade from an informed perspective. So good morning, J Squad. Thank you for joining. So let's get things started. So as always, I'll be starting with a disclaimer. These sessions are not investment advice. They are not a recommendation to trade. So you should always do your own due diligence. So among the key highlights in the markets this morning is one, the Q1 GDP of Japan shrinks more than expected. So Japan's GDP shrank 0.5% quarter over quarter in the first quarter of 2024, compared with market estimates of 0.4% fall. And after a downwardly revised stagnation in the prior period, a flash figure showed. So private consumption fell for the fourth quarter due to rising cost of living and sluggish wages. Capital expenditure also dropped, and net trade was a drag on the GDP. So among the other highlights in the markets, we have seen European stocks being cautious. So both the EURUSDCHF 50 and the EURUSDCHF 600 were around the flat line on Thursday, following recent highs as traders focus on corporate results. So Philippine Central Bank holds rates steady as expected. Mainland Norway GDP grows at 0.2% in the first quarter. Then Japanese yen climbs despite weak GDP data. Brent extends gains as US crude stocks fall. So this was reported 6 hours ago. So Brent crude futures rose above $83 per barrel on Thursday, extending gains from the previous session as a larger than expected. Sorry, just opening up the link. So extending gains from the previous session as a larger than expected decline in weekly US crude oil inventories supported oil prices. So EIA data showed that the US crude stockpiles fell by member countries exceeded their production cap by 568,000 barrels per day in April, but maintained solid demand projections of 2.25 million barrels per day in 2024 and 1.85 million barrels per day for the next year. So those are the key highlights in the markets. And now, if you focus on the economic calendar, you'll notice among the key highlights for the day is one, preliminary GDP, which you have just mentioned, came in worse than expected. So if you look at a quarter-over-quarter performance of Japanese GDP, you notice how it has been getting worse over time. So if you focus on the most recent announcements, this is the third quarter that we are seeing the Japanese GDP contracting, meaning that the economy is still in a technical recession and things could get a lot worse from here. So then employment change in Australia, the economy created 38.5k jobs in the last month, and this was better than expected. And of course, the previous reading was a worsening situation where we had negative 5.9k. So unemployment rate worsened to 4.1% from the previous reading of 3.9%. So it's a kind of a mixed data. But then the key focus for today going forward will be one, the report that has just been released at 11 a.m., the ECB Financial Stability Review, then a host of US data that is set to be released at 3:30 p.m. So we'll be getting 4 different reports all at the same time. One, the weekly employment claims, building permits, the Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index, as well as industrial production data, all at 3:30 p.m. with industrial production a little bit late at exactly 4:15 p.m. So the major volatility is expected at the New York Open around 3:30 p.m. So this is when we'll be expecting a lot of volatility, especially in US dollar pairs. So besides this, there's a couple of things to notice in the market. So in this case, we will be looking at the performance of the stock sectors in the US. So one, the tech sector yesterday really did well. It was up 2.19%. Real estate 1.4%, utilities 1.32%, healthcare 1.27%, and communication services 1%. So we know that the hottest sector for this year has been the utility sector as well as the energy sector. The utility sector maintained growth, but then energy did not perform well yesterday. So if you look at the overall performance and you look at the real estate, has been the best performing over the last 1 week, being up 4.29%. And for the 1 month performance, it's utilities with 15.28%. And then for the last 3 months, it's still utilities which have been up 18.45%. Half year performance, it's tech, basically following the tech boom that was happening late last year. So with that in mind, if you look at the Forex performance, for 1 day, it seems that the Japanese yen is the strongest currency today. But then if you look at the week, you'd notice that the New Zealand dollar has been the strongest, whereas from a monthly perspective, both the Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar have been the strongest currencies in the market. And if you look at the past quarter, then the Australian dollar still maintains the strongest performance for that period. So we might be looking at these Asian currencies as favorites to continue extending their bullish rally. So that being said, I think it's enough of the economic calendar now. And now we can jump straight and try to understand what is currently happening on the charts. And once we understand what's happening on the charts, then hopefully you'll get to understand where we can allocate or identify trading opportunities. So right from the charts, from what we are looking at here, just give me a second. So this is the US 500, and this is the highlight for the day, as you can see the title of today's webinar. So the US equity indices have now broken into a new all-time high. This happened yesterday. So this line here marks the previous high. So from the forward chart, this was the highest price that we have ever seen in the SP 500. And then yesterday we had this nice break. The market rallied and then slowed down towards midnight or just midnight. So if you look at other equity indices, for instance, the Nasdaq, this was the highest price ever. So from the forward chart, we saw price breaking this area, making a rally to this point, and then making that break yesterday. And now it's taking a breather around 18,617. And of course, if you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Index, it had this bearish run. So we tracked the progress in the recovery journey. Market got to this area, broke immediately, pulled back a little bit, and then rallied to this high. And now, from yesterday's performance, the market got really close to the previous all-time high. So it's safe to say that all the US equity indices are actually trading at near or above all-time highs. And the real question we'll be asking ourselves today is that whether we will be seeing a continuation of this bullish momentum. So what was the major driving force behind this market rally? So this takes us back to the economic calendar. And if you followed the news yesterday, then you must have seen that the US CPI, which is a measure of consumer price index, which basically estimates the level of inflation in the US, it dropped as expected to 3.4%, down from a previous reading of 3.5%. So signs that inflation is somewhat slowing down and moving down from 3.5% to 3.4% are basically quite positive, especially for the Fed, which has been fighting to drop inflation back to the 2% target. So in this case, having seen inflation drop or slow down somewhat, basically means that there is more optimism that the Fed may now consider cutting interest rates as far as September of this year. So that's the news behind the optimism that is driving equities higher. So this strong rally that happened yesterday was as a result of the CPI report. So going forward for the rest of the day, I expect at least to see some form of pullback, but then the overall direction is bullish, and we expect to see some further momentum. So even though we are seeing the markets taking a step backwards, especially US 30, and if you look at the tech sector, that is the Nasdaq, yes, you can see the market attempting to move back downwards, but the overall sentiment is that the market is currently very bullish. So if you look from the daily chart, this is how it looks like. So it's a market that had this pullback last month, made a recovery, and then this month, since it started, we've only had one red day. So all the days within this month have always been green, and today we could be seeing an extension of this rally. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, for the S&P 500, if you go to the daily chart, so since the month started, we haven't had a red day in the S&P 500. So it's just bullish momentum, and I expect to see some form of continuation here. So for the Dow, if you look at the daily, since the month started, only one day when we had a bearish momentum, but for the rest of the days, it's just bullish momentum. And now we could be seeing a potential test where the market could potentially break the previous all-time high that we saw on the first trading day of last month, which was the 1st of April, or rather Fool's Day. So I believe that's where we have most of the optimism coming in. But then we also have a lot of price action happening in Bitcoin. So from the daily chart, this is how it looks like. So I'll try and clean my chart, remove all these lines so that the chart is clear. And now what we have is a chart where the market was literally just consolidating. So trading along this line here, and then from the upper side, if you connect the previous highs, it's almost around this area here. So Bitcoin made quite a strong rally yesterday, and now you can see that we are almost completing this journey. And of course, there is that potential that eventually the market could break and even head higher. So in this case, we could be seeing a new all-time high happening in Bitcoin. That is breaking the previous high that we saw in March, around $73,000 per Bitcoin. But for now, the short-term journey seems to be headed to the upper trend line, somewhere along the lines of 68,790. So from the 4-hour chart, this is how it looks like. So very strong momentum this week. And of course, if you look up from the 1-hour chart, then the majority of the momentum only happened yesterday. So this is when we had the strong bullish momentum, breaking away from this resistance that we are seeing here. So if you've been following and finding this resistance working against the bullish momentum, now you can see the break happen and the market accelerated higher. So there is that potential that we could be seeing some continuation later in the day. So besides that, if you look at gold and how it performed yesterday, then you notice that there was quite some volatility moving up, down, up, down. Eventually, market managed to bottom here with a pinpoint of the previous resistance now turned into a support. So after bouncing from this area, we saw an acceleration of price, breaking last week's high and moving even higher. So in this case, we are seeing more bullish momentum in gold, and this could continue for the rest of the day with a potential retest of this area. So if price keeps pushing backwards, then we expect to see a retest of this area and potentially the market bouncing from that area and now forming a new leg upwards. So gold has been making this recovery. So ever since breaking this pattern, you can see this period where it was trading within this wedge. So after breaking, we have had this struggle to move up, a pullback followed by a strong rally, and now we are eyeing several of the previous highs. So one of the previous highs is here at $2,400 per ounce of gold. We also have this area here, which was a previous high, 24.18, and of course the all-time high at 24.31. So I expect to see some further bullish momentum in gold, subject with the pullbacks. So potentially we could be seeing the market retesting 23.78 before making a continuation. So for the majors, we have seen these breaks happening. So we already have a confirmed break happening in USDCHF, or the dollar trading against the Swiss franc. From the 1-hour chart, this is how it looks like. So it was a clean break at the start of the day. It's pulling back down upwards, but then it could be a case where we normally see the market breaking and then retesting a level before continuing in that direction. So in this case, we have had this clean break here. Market is now pulling back to the breakout point. So this is the momentum right now. So potentially, the idea is to start looking for a potential continuation pattern here, where the market could hit the high and now start going back downwards. So for the New Zealand dollar trading against the US dollar, we have had this break here after the market bottomed around this area here. Then after making this break, there was a very strong rally with immediate targets along this area already being hit, immediate targets around this area already being hit. And now you can see the market pulling downwards. So potentially, we should be looking for this area for a potential of a continuation. But then if that fails, then we start looking for some form of reversal, maybe to the previous bottom here or even all the way down. But for now, this bearish momentum, it's something to observe along this price level of 0.61048. So for the pound USD, a very strong rally. This is something we have been discussing over the week. So from the 4-hour chart, we had a breakout on this trend line, a retest and a continuation. We all know how these patterns happen. Market makes a breakout, finds resistance, pulls back to the breakout point, and then bounces and continues in the same direction. So this is the pattern you should be aware of whenever you're looking at a breakout. So breakout, retest, and then continuation. So in this case, our target was 1.26334. Then yesterday, it continued to push even higher. And now we have a new previous high level to be observing, which is around this price level, around 1.27070. So now after the market making a rally to that area, there has been a pullback. And this is the area to observe now to see whether there will be some further bearish momentum, which could lead us back to 1.26334. But then if the market fails to break this area, then the idea is to look for continuation. As usual, it's better to follow the trend than going against it. So if we see the pound resuming bullish momentum, then it might be a sign for an entry to go for continuation. So USD CAD had continued with this bearish momentum. So I remember on Monday, we were looking at this bounce here. So the market didn't bounce strong, kept going down. So it's more of a breakout and a retest. So the key level support was all the way down around this area here. So market broke to the lower side, retested, went down, pulled back, and now made a clean break yesterday, followed by a reversal today. So now we continue tracking the same kind of pattern that I've been talking about. So market makes a breakout from this support highlighted in yellow, pulls back, and now a potential for continuation could be playing out around that area. So this is the price level to observe, 1.36319. So as for Euro USD, it's a similar case. So a very strong bullish momentum. So we found a resistance around this area here. And immediately the market got to this area, you can see the reversal. So from the 1-hour chart here, we didn't have a clean break. It's only a very small break. The market started changing direction, which might be an indication that the euro could now start weakening against the dollar. And a potential target could be all the way down at 1.08119. So USD seems to be the highlight of the day. So despite the economy going into a recession, the Japanese yen was very strong against the dollar. But then from what we are seeing this morning, there was a deep dive all the way down, followed by a very strong reversal. So if you've been following the themes in USDJPY trading, anytime we've had a very strong momentum downwards, it has been met with an equal measure of opposite direction. So in this case, I would expect, at least for the day, to see the market going for some previous support around this area here. So we could be seeing the market going back to 155.367 after erasing all the early morning losses. So the losses we experienced in the morning have already been recovered, and I expect to see an extension of this momentum. So if I was to select that for the day, then the USDJPY chart would be my favorite for today. So the dollar index made some big losses yesterday, especially after CPI came in at 3.4%, down from 3.5%. So as long as inflation is moving towards a 2% target, then the potential for the Fed cutting interest rates increases, which tends to weaken the dollar. So that's why we had this bearish momentum here. So now, as the dollar index looks to recover, this is a key area to be observing, where after breaking, we are seeing the market pulling back, and we could be seeing the dollar in the market going for the retest. And once we get the retest, there's that potential that the market could potentially, I'm not saying I'm sure it will, I am not sure. We could be seeing the market retesting and then making a continuation here. So for the UK 100 index or the FTSE 100 index, it has been creating new all-time highs for quite a period now, just pushing after breaking this high here. So all this momentum has been accepted. It has been awesome for anyone who was bullish, but now we can see signs of weakness, and signs of weakness tend to appear like this. So market forms a high, following day misses forming a new high. Then it breaks out higher, then eventually forms a new high. Then this morning forms a high that is nowhere close to yesterday's high. The current price is lower than the lowest price yesterday, which means that we are looking at a potential reversal here, and we could be seeing some further momentum happening in the FTSE 100 index. So in this case, we should be observing this price level here for a potential break, and if the market breaks this area, then the idea is that we could be seeing some further price acceleration downwards, especially after the good number of days where we have experienced some strong bullish momentum. So for the yen pairs, we are seeing markets recovering. So the New Zealand dollar is making a strong recovery against the yen. For the pound, after this big dip happened early in the morning, we are seeing the pound coming in and recovering all the losses quite strongly. So I expect to see a further continuation of the same. So I believe shorting the yen might be the trading idea for the day going forward. So that's it for the day. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the comment section. So I'll be responding right away. I want to check on all the comments. So good morning, Charles Kanzo. Good morning, Jack. So a good question here from Owen Moneki. Hi, Rufus. And is this the end of higher for longer narrative? I don't believe this is the end. From what Jerome Powell said in his speech yesterday, he basically mentioned that policy can be adjusted using the quarterly results. And by quarterly, it means the report on inflation for a period of 3 months rather than 1 month. So in the first quarter of the year, they were not very confident with the way inflation performed. So inflation continued being sticky and above 3% within the first quarter. And that's why the Fed resulted in saying that they want to keep interest rates higher for longer until they are confident that they are seeing inflation sustainably or confidently moving towards the 2% target. Then fast forward in April, we saw inflation coming in at 3.4%, slightly below 3.5% in the previous month. But then if we continue seeing this progress, let's say in the next two reports. So in the next report that we get in June and the next one that we get in July. So if the three reports now point to a downwards momentum in inflation, then in that case, we could start considering the end of the higher for longer narrative. But as per now, the higher for longer narrative continues to be the case. But then the effects in the markets today are largely reflective of the CPI report yesterday, which has a short-term impact on the markets. So yes, the dollar will eventually recover. So as for now, we continue enjoying the weak dollar, but at some point, I expect to see the dollar recovering. So this weak dollar, it's not much to be worried about. At some point, we will see the dollar recovering. But for today, the recovery is very much welcome in USDJPY pair. So in this case, the dollar index making a rally, and the dollar making a rally against the yen is something that is very much welcome. So let's check the other questions. So this one is from Jack. Does FX Pesa offer trading commodities such as wheat, sugar, and futures trading? Yes, we do offer. They are available on the platform. You can always check. So if you go to your platform, let's say you go to your market watch, you right click and then you go to symbols. Then from the symbols section, you can always see the commodities here. We have coffee, we have cocoa, we have cotton, as well as futures for, let's say, Eurobond, carbon emissions, the UK bonds or UK gilt futures, high-grade copper futures, natural gas futures, and more. So all these are available on the trading platform. So let's check the next question. Good morning, Boomba. Will the market go down soon? I don't know, but my speculation is that the market will keep going up for the foreseeable period. The markets are currently very optimistic. So in this case, there's a good chance that the all-time highs will continue being broken. Hello, Kenos, and hello, Leonard. I already made a comment on Bitcoin. Hello, people mid sorry, I think I got a hitch with my connection. So what is driving the USD to this much weakness? Can we expect it to make major recovery today with the upcoming unemployment claims news? I don't know. I'm not very sure, but the market is overreacting to yesterday's news, and that has led to the dollar weakness. So while the dollar is recovering, I don't think it will recover against all other assets. So for instance, if you look at gold and the bullish momentum it has had since yesterday, I don't expect to see the market making an overall reversal of yesterday's move. So while yes, there's a good chance that the dollar might be boosted further by today's news, there's also that opportunity or chance that the dollar might continue weakening as a result of the unemployment claims that comes up at 3:30 p.m. So it's a wait and see kind of scenario. Nothing is fixed or guaranteed in the markets. What's your view on pound yen? I expect the pound to continue recovering against the yen. Which is the most tradable pair today? I already mentioned USD yen seems like the most likely in my opinion. UK 100 forming head and shoulder pattern, highly likely. What's your take towards USD going to the US election? So now that the market is pricing in a potential rate cut in September, and the election in the US is November, if the US actually goes for rate cuts in September, close to the US election, then there's a good chance that the dollar could weaken around that period, and potentially the stocks could skyrocket, as a weak dollar tends to be quite positive for the stock market. What is futures and how is it traded? This is something I've covered in the Novice to Pro series. So right after this session, kindly check on the Novice to Pro series. I've covered all the tradable assets with the definitions, descriptions, and I covered some substantial ground. Look for a particular episode on FX Pesa YouTube that basically covers the tradable assets. So USD card, we already did the analysis, and unless you are late, we already covered that. So I'm trying to check on this. I know our time is up. Yeah, so we had this break. The dollar is recovering, but oil is still pretty strong. So we could be seeing the dollar weakening again against the Canadian dollar. So we saw the price of oil make a big dip yesterday and then a very strong recovery, which means that the likelihood of oil continuing this journey and now pushing higher to the next level is becoming more realistic. So in this case, with bullish oil, we could also be seeing a bullish Canadian dollar. So I believe some of these questions are repetitions. For instance, I've already covered the analysis on pound USD. What's the expected trend for the Nasdaq today? Is it okay to enter as a bull? That is also a repetition. Guys, I've already covered the indices. It's the first thing I covered at the beginning of the session. And I mentioned there's a very strong bullishness, and there's the likelihood that the market will continue with the bullish momentum. So Audi New Zealand, across, we already covered Audi USD, New Zealand USD. We identified that the two currencies have been the strongest over the last 3 months, and there's a likelihood that they continue with that strength. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you on the next session. So remember to check out the newest episodes on the Financially Incorrect podcast, as well as the Bullish Banter podcast. And on top of that, if you'd like to open a